Fort Myers Beach just recorded a 68-mile-per-hour gust. Hurricane Milton is currently a Category 3 storm, with winds topping 120 miles per hour. But ABC News chief meteorologist Ginger Z in Fort Myers says, in addition to wind, this storm's going to bring a lot of water, too.
Just in a couple of hours, we should see landfall, certainly before midnight. And I want to just set the scene of where I am here. We've obviously seen surge start to breach, and this is low tide. Right there, the dock covered at the hotel that we're staying at. Wind-wise, we've been in good shape, and that's why we're so far from the center. I mean, Milton passed at closest 120 miles from us, but it's now northwest and about 50 miles west-southwest of Sarasota.
Tornado warnings also currently in effect across much of the eastern part of the state. This is ABC News. Israel is still warning of a lethal attack on Iran in retaliation for a recent missile attack, that as missile attacks intensify between Israel and Lebanon.
Hezbollah continues to fire dozens of rockets on northern Israel. One salvo of 20 rockets on the town of Kiryat Shmona, killing 2 Israeli civilians and wounding several others. That just a day after Hezbollah fired a record 110 rockets on the district of Haifa. The Iranian-backed militia intensifying its attacks over the last week after the Israeli army assassinated dozens of its leaders and launched a ground offensive in southern Lebanon. Jordana Miller, ABC News, Jerusalem.
Lawyers for Sean Diddy Combs say the music mogul wants to head to trial on sex trafficking charges next spring. He's entered a not guilty plea and is due in court tomorrow. Philanthropist Melinda French Gates will grant $250 million to support women's health. I'm Mike Dubusky, ABC News.
Tommy! I can't wait for golf this weekend, huh, buddy? Time flies. Love you, man. Oh, don't forget your knee brace again. We aren't in college anymore.
Moments together matter, so help protect yourself from RSV. If you're 75 or older or 60 plus with a chronic condition like asthma, COPD, heart disease, or severe diabetes, you're at higher risk of landing in the hospital from RSV, and there are no prescription RSV treatments. Check eligibility and schedule your RSV vaccine at vaxassist.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Give the star in your life the brightest gift in the world. Name a star after them. This is Rocky Moselle with International Star Registry. For $59 and a call to 800-282-3333 or visit starregistry.com, you can name a star for birthdays, weddings, or even memorials. Over 45 years, we have named millions of stars for celebrities and individuals from around the world. The star you name will be recorded in book form in the U.S. Copyright Office. Visit starregistry.com or call 800-282-3333.
The views and opinions of the following show do not reflect those of WSMN, its owners, and/or associates.
Welcome to the Common Sense Conservatives, a political discussion group about current events and other government-related matters every Wednesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Right here on WSMN 1590 AM, WSMN 95.3 FM, and streaming live on wsmn.live. Making sense of the inverted reality we are subject to every day, the Common Sense Conservatives are here to help bring you back to reality. Now, your hosts, Chris Wyatt, Todd McKinley, and John Grosvenor.
Well, hey, folks, welcome back. It's Wednesday, October 9th, 2024. We are less than a month away from, I know, you're tired of hearing this. I'm tired of saying it, but the most consequential election, not in the history of the United States, but ladies and gentlemen, in the history of the world. Liberty is at risk around the planet. Everywhere on this planet, liberty is at risk. Welcome back to the program. I'm joined tonight by my co-host, John Grosvenor, up there in the studio in Nashua, New Hampshire. John, what's the word?
Oh, not a whole heck of a lot, Chris. You know how it is. Things are, just as you said, things are in chaos, man. FEMA doesn't know what it's doing. They're obviously lost. It took them 2 weeks to get things set up while people were struggling and suffering. And it's a whole lot of ridiculousness out there. And I can't believe people would actually vote for Kamala Harris. And she's going that far in the polls is nonsense to me. But that's what's happening.
John, listen, brother. You got to give the lady a break. All right, come on. Look, it's all about catastrophe equity. Don't you know? Didn't you watch the Zoom session from FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security in which the transgender gentleman got up there with his he and they pronouns and said that, you know, the LGBTQ plus community is historically oppressed? Fair statement, but they deserve special treatment. You know, the catastrophe equity. They deserve to be treated better than their neighbors who are floating down the river and their bodies dangling from tree root branches 60 feet up an embankment.
You're right, Chris. That was rude and insensitive of me. I can't believe I would put people's lives ahead of DEI. I mean, that is just ridiculous.
Send you to sensitivity training I'll attribute it to the patriarchy and your white Anglo-Saxon Protestant male arrogance. Okay. Now that we've got John back on track, folks, Todd McKinley will be with us a little bit later on. He's busy out, I don't know, oppressing somebody as a white male. That's got to be happening somewhere.
Yeah, right. He's oppressing him with his white male privilege.
So, John, you're talking about a federal government that, let's see, they can't respond to natural disasters. They can't balance a checkbook. They can't withdraw from Afghanistan correctly. They can't make proper foreign policy decisions. They can't respond to citizens' needs, but they can bury us in debt, devalue our currency, hand out all of our national wealth to criminal alien invaders, leave our borders unsecure, infiltrate and flood our neighborhoods with aliens who have no cultural values akin to Americans wherever you find them around this country. They are very good at doing all that.
Yeah. I guess I was going to say they're pretty inept, but since you put it that way, I guess they're more than qualified for screwing up the country. I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
They got that down.
And I think the chief architects of that are Sleepy Creepy Joe Biden and, of course, his running pal there, the fellow traveler, who has now accepted responsibility for all of Biden's policies, which she should, and that's Kamala Harris.
So I see some Barack Obama behind this, and I was sitting there looking at FEMA, and it's so ridiculous to me, Chris, because they have something from way back in the day called logistics supply chain management systems, and that's well and fine. You want to keep yourself coordinated, know how to get the supplies you need when you need them, and get them there on site. Obviously, they can't do that, but hey, they got a program, but. They actually got something now since I think 2021. It looks to me like it went into effect in 2021. Transportation service providers. What that means is trucking carriers have to be registered with FEMA or they can't carry disaster relief.
Well, listen, apparently when the federal government can't show up with military helicopters, can't get FEMA in, and ignores the needs of people in Western North Carolina and in North Georgia and in South Carolina for 10 days before anyone even begins to show up. Apparently private citizens using drones to fly around their neighborhoods, what's left of them, to locate survivors and help people be rescued and get relief supplies through. That's going to be banned by Mayor Pete. Mayor Pete has blocked us from using that stuff. It's insane.
It is. Did you see that video? That helicopter pilot was rescuing people off the mountain and bringing them down where they can get supplies and fed and sheltered and fresh clothes. And he brought the wife down. He dropped his son off because of the weight and stuff, like they wanted to make sure for safety and stuff. He didn't want to overload his helicopter. Maybe he didn't seat more than two. I don't recall. But his son gets out of the chopper. He brings the wife down to the bottom there where they're all set up, and he's confronted and told, if you rescue anybody else, we're arresting you. He was literally told he was going to be arrested for rescuing.
It's absolutely
people,
insane.
saving lives.
The federal government gets in our way. That's why the founders sought limited government. They knew the dangers of an oppressive government, an all overarching government that sticks its tentacles into your bedroom. Isn't it funny how leftists run around, my body, my choice. Yeah, well, it's my income, my choice. Hit the road, Jack. It's my life, my choice. It's my house, my choice. Hey, guess what? It's my Smith & Wesson. You better keep walking.
So I've decided to agree with the left on that issue. They're right. It is their body and their choice. They got a choice between condoms. They can force a man to use condoms. They got a diaphragm. They've got what's that, EID? They've got the pill. IED.
A little behind on your birth control methods there, John.
Hey, look, I'm not the one that's got to have that inserted in. I'm just saying it's something out there that they put in there to prevent pregnancy. But I'm saying they got a lot of choices out. So yeah. They do have choices. Why do they have to rely on the worst possible choice ever? Why is it always after the fact? Why not preventative? What happened to prevent? You've been in the military. You understand how this works, right? Prevention is the best policy.
Well, I think deterrence works better. A father with a belt scaring his kids not having sex.
Well, back in the days, Red Foreman and all that, when Dad was quick to whip out the belt and hand you the law real quick.
Get me the strap. Get me the strap. Yeah, I remember those days. No, look, the government is an absolute disaster. It screws up everything it touches. It turns it all to dust, and then it oppresses citizens. It's unbelievable. They're very good at colluding, cajoling, and coercing tech companies into silencing Americans in violation of the First Amendment. Now, to be clear to the audience, private companies can censor you. You have no free speech with a private company. You have to adhere by their rules and regulations. But when the government gets them to do that at their behest, then government officials are silencing speech through a proxy, which is a violation of the Constitution's First Amendment. It's unbelievable.
Right.
And that's what's been going on for since the bureaucracy under Trump was doing that. Trump's eye was elsewhere, what with all the fake impeachments and things going on. But this, ladies and gentlemen, we have people who have yet to be found. Their bodies are entombed, encased in riverbeds, lake beds, in debris somewhere. We are talking about a death toll that will likely exceed well over 1,000 in Western North Carolina alone at the end of this. No one knows because people still aren't accounted for. By the way, today, North Carolina announced that they're going to change their election rules so that they can, take this one too. So they claim it's because it's a response to disaster. But we all know that that's a partially true story. They're salivating. So that's the one thing the federal government's probably willing to help North Carolina out with, and that's altering their voting and allowing for mail-in ballots and things like that. Look, to be fair, whole communities are wiped out. Entire places where people go to polling stations no longer exist. And probably some election officials and volunteers are also perished or homeless and have nothing and unable to perform their jobs. That said, there are far more effective ways to do this than North Carolina's decided to do. And I think they're trying to undermine the integrity of it. And meanwhile, Uncle Milty is here. Uncle Milty has arrived on the coast of Florida, West Coast.
Gonna make landfall sometime late this evening or early tomorrow morning. At least it reduced down. What was it? A Cat 3, possibly a Cat 4. And they were talking about a severe Cat 5 a while back ago. So yes.
Well, of course, you have to satisfy the climate zealots. This is all about climate change. It's interesting because Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted some outrageous thing, if that's an actual quote, about her claiming that they were controlling the weather. And I agree with the Republican from Florida who said, that's nonsense. And he's a first responder in his previous affectation. No one's controlling the weather. So, I agree. So why are the left telling us that Marjorie Taylor Greene is controlling weather? And they're upset about it when for the past 15 years, the left has been telling us we're responsible for the weather. We're controlling the weather with our carbon emissions. You can't have it both ways. You can't call a nutter on the right if you've been a nutter on the left for 20 years.
Well, wait a minute. No, fairness, they're not saying we're controlling the weather. They're saying we're affecting the weather.
And how do you control the weather? By affecting the impact it. So it's not, it's 1 + 1 = 2 here.
The thing about weather modification or controlling the weather, that's been a theory around for a very long time. There's been a lot of claims about that. One of the things I used to talk about many, many years ago, by the way, was the ability to inject microwave energy into cloud formations, because you understand how tornadoes work. And so when a cold front meets a warm front, you get tornadoes will spin off from those things. And they talk about injecting microwave energy into that to reduce the effects of the collision of the warm front and the cold front, to offset it so you don't have tornadoes spinning off from it. So they talked about this for a lot of years. Now they're talking about these things that have fallen out of the sky. It's supposed to be some sort of crystals, or not crystals, something else. But anyway, and they talked about a program they had a long time ago where they dropped dry ice into some cloud formations and they do. It's called cloud seeding, and they've got stuff where they can try to make it snow more so they get better rainfalls and drier areas, drier climates where you need to feed farms and things like that. There's a lot of things or programs about it, but I don't know the effectiveness of it. I don't know that it's really effective, if they can really control it, or it's more like just a shot in the dark for them.
Yeah, well, I'm more interested in that microwave research about, how they use that to keep Joe Biden's brain functioning, and also how we can use it effectively in the halls of Congress.
Well, I think it's electrodes for Joe Biden's brain functioning, but I think that too is a shot in the dark. Maybe it keeps him breathing and his heart pumping.
Yeah, Joe Biden coming out speaking in the White House press room for the first time in his entire presidency. Can you believe that? It's the first time he's been out there. And he uses the occasion to spend 13 minutes telling lies and fairy tales, attacking Donald Trump, and calling Donald Trump a threat to democracy, when Joe Biden colluded with the genuine threat to democracy in the selected but not elected candidate nomination of his successor, the woman who called him a racist. That would be Kamala Harris.
So Courtney here says Marjorie Taylor Greene said that Jewish space lasers are what's causing the California wildfires. That's another theory. They think that's what happened in Hawaii, that it was deliberate, government controlled, and it was lasers. That's why anything blue didn't burn, and so on and so forth. I don't really buy into that or subscribe to that. I mean, when I see proof or evidence, hey, I'm on board. But until then, I'm kind of I'm leery about that one. That one sounds kind of weird to me.
Ladies and gentlemen, just for clarification, this is not Coast to Coast with George Norrie tonight.
Oh, hey man,
so Art
Art
sure.
Bell was like a radio god. Okay, that was the
Yeah,
original
Art Bell.
Coast to Coast AM.
That's right. Then came George Norrie. Then what's his name there from Caravan of Midnight? John B. Wells.
No, John B. Wells is no longer there. He used to do.
No. He it's right. As I'm saying, it was George Bell. It was Bell. Then it was George Norrie, and then John B. Wells filled in for a bit. And they actually had the show for a while, for about a year and a half or something like that. He has his own thing called Caravan of Midnight now.
Yeah, he's an excellent late night radio show host.
I've been a guest on that program many times.
So is Todd. Actually, he's been on there once or twice, I think.
All right, didn't know that.
Actually, I was just on the site yesterday and I saw Todd's image pop up as a recent guest or something like that. I was kind of curious if he'd been on there like last couple of weeks or something.
Okay, didn't know that. But the California wildfires are caused by lightning and careless Californians. That's the end of the discussion there.
Yeah, and they got a lot of dry dead wood that supposedly they're not allowed to pick up. They're not allowed to clean out, and that's been
that's
issues for a catalyst to it.
And that's been a problem for Canada, but it's also been a problem with how they've damaged the redwoods in the sequoia forest with their idiotic human hubris, thinking that, we can't let fires start in the sequoia forest or we can't let it start in the redwoods, only to find out that for decades they screwed the pooch because those cones need that intense heat to burst open so the seeds can germinate. And they also need all that brush burned off by lightning. The trees have their main branches and the life support where they're generating their energy hundreds of feet up in the air from the redwoods. And so it's not a threat to redwood forest to have these fires. And they controlled it for decades. And we wound up with a tinderbox and nearly lost a lot of acres of redwoods because of stupidity. Not to mention we lost generation or two or more of redwood trees that didn't germinate because there was no open space and they could get no sunlight. And they didn't germinate. So idiots. Human hubris is something else. The human beings think they control everything.
I'll answer this phone call, man. Go ahead.
All righty. Well, folks, thanks for tuning in to the Common Sense Conservatives right here on WSMN 1590 AM, 95.3 on your FM dial in Nashua, New Hampshire, Southern New Hampshire, the voice of Southern New Hampshire, and around the world on the internet, or on the interwebs, as Todd likes to say. You can find us on Facebook, on YouTube, and you can also go to the internet at wsmn.live, wsmn.live. That's not really silly Minnesotans. It's wsmn.live. But thanks for tuning into our program. Oh, you're back.
Yeah, I am. We're going to get the scoop on why John B. Wells isn't any longer part of Coast to Coast AM if you want it.
Well, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, well, he just got in. I mean, he heard us talking about it, and hey, your line's open there, Billy.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good, man. What's going on?
All right, so yeah, I thought I'd chime in on this discussion since it was being discussed. Why John B. is no longer with Coast to Coast, and as the Colonel said, it's old. Of course, it was over 10 years ago when it happened, but I guess John B. was told not to tell the truth, and he got a warning, and he continued to tell the truth anyway. And he said the U.S. is on the verge of a communist resurgence, and they said, that's it, you're done, and put George Norrie on there. And then, of course, Caravan of Midnight was started right around that same time.
Well, was that when Art Bell was still there?
Yeah.
So he was going to give that show to John B. Wells. Is that right? Because Art Bell, I remember he's trying to retire. He gave it to somebody who had it for a period of time. Then he came back and for about a year, and then he gave it to George Norrie.
Yes, because John B., of course, got a little too political and strayed away too much from the UFO conspiracy theories and things like that, and focused on real issues, and they didn't like it.
Oh, well, yeah. I don't remember Art Bell being too political. I know he used to get in these conspiracy theories, and he didn't sound very left-leaning the way he did it, but he was the perfect radio show host because he never interjected himself into the discussion as an expert. He always just did an interview. And so whoever he was interviewing was the expert as far as he was concerned, you know?
Indeed. Well, that's all I have. You two carry on with the show. Have a good one.
Awesome.
Thank you
for calling in, Billy.
Yeah, so just for those who've never experienced it, let's go with Sherman, Mr. Peabody, in the Wayback Machine to the year 2000, coast to coast. Here we are, our host, George Norrie. A consignment of Pentel pens arrived at an office in Gallup, New Mexico. Little do we know, these were alien transmitters. Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. Look, John,
Courtney said something about asking us if we were saying Marjorie Taylor Greene is not credible, and that's not what we're saying at all.
I never said that. I said that she was accused of that.
I said I didn't subscribe to the idea. I think that's why, basically. But look, that was just my opinion, and whether there's lasers or not, I don't know. She's making claims to it.
Look. I mean, right now you can't trust anything. We have the federal government and America's favorite Haitian lesbian, Jean-Pierre. We have her, and we have the federal government and Joe Biden and Kamala Harris lying, actually producing campaign ads, accusing President Trump and Republicans of lying about FEMA's response. They say that Trump lied, that there was no money. But it was Alejandro Mayorkas himself who was not misquoted, who was quoted verbatim last week in front of the podium saying that they had no funds for hurricanes, that money was gone. It is FEMA's own website that talks about spending $1 billion for criminal alien invaders humanitarian assistance. It's FEMA's website. They are trying to deny it. This is where the information came from. It didn't come from Republicans making it up. And right now they're running around and running ads. You can't believe anything they say. There are total liars. Nothing coming out of the government is factual. It's all propaganda. They have no idea what they're doing, and they have no shame. They're spinning everything and accusing their opponent of the thing that they're actually doing. It's the same thing here in Pennsylvania, where McCormick is running for the Senate. And CNN ran a hit piece today in conjunction, in collusion with the Casey campaign. By the way, people ask me on this program and on my radio program, or on my other broadcast program, last year I said, so you got Uncle Fester, that's one of your senators. Who's the other one? I said, I got to think for a second. I think it's still Bob Casey, but I won't know until the election season starts, because that's when you usually see him crowd out as like Puxatawny Phil. He pops up and goes, 6 more years. Bob Casey is lying about Dave McCormick, talking about him being a hedge fund manager and about how evil and how they shorted all these companies in Pennsylvania, which is a total lie. The hedge fund that he ran shorted companies, a basket of companies. He shorted industries, and shorting people is not an evil thing. It's an investment. You're taking a risk by borrowing stock, and you have to pay the stock back. If it goes down in price, you make money. If it goes up, you lose money. And people long. You buy stocks for the long term. It's just the opposite of that. And his hedge fund actually spent 83 to 90 plus % of their funds buying long-term stocks, not shorting stocks. It is disingenuous. There's nothing coming out of Democrats that's even remotely credible, including the stories that are leaking out for Democratic circles about how concerned they are about Michigan and how concerned they are about Pennsylvania and Philadelphia, and that the polls are going against them. The polls are going against them, but don't believe it. Don't believe what they say. Believe what you see. Believe what your lying eyes show you.
No, yeah, we've said this before on the show. If they're in action, they're fraudulent. If they're talking, they're lying. That's all the left does is makes up stories, and they stick with the lies. I mean, we still hear Hillary Clinton. That's already been proven wrong time and time again about Russian collusion. It's like, how many times this lie that we already know is a lie?
We still haven't seen anyone in the media fact check Kamala Harris's endless parade of lies during the debate. The first one that comes to mind is Donald Trump has filed for bankruptcy 6 times. That's a factual lie. I mean, that's factually incorrect. That's a lie. He's never filed for personal bankruptcy. That's a total lie.
Wait a minute.
It's a fiction.
They would give you misinformation?
My point is
not a tolerance to misinformation.
No fact check, but interrupting. Yeah. And I love the response to JD Vance when they tried. There's no such thing as actually there's. And it's this whole nonsense about no state in the country allows children to be aborted after birth. That's actually not true. A couple of them do that. I remember in New York State, they were standing up there in their legislature with tears in their eyes when they smacked the gavel and the bill passed, allowed them to terminate a child when it was born. Unbelievable. They're sick, ghoulish people. And then they lie about debates. Folks, this election is not about abortion. Stop making it about abortion. This election is about the destruction of global order, the destruction and the abrogation of liberty, the collusion, the coercion, and the cajoling of the federal government to silence their opponents through tech companies, which are very powerful, the misuse of the media in influencing our election and stealing our election. That's what's going on right now. And you know what? Every time they try to get Kamala Harris, an edge, they screw it up because she's an idiot. She's a blathering idiot. She can't string two thoughts together. It's unbelievable. Did you see the one the other day where she got lost when the teleprompter froze?
Yeah, she kind of meandered. She did Obama. She didn't know what to say. She was looking around, scratching her neck, going, let me just tell another long-winded nothingness story.
We're going to do it. 32 days. 32 days. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Now I remember Barack Obama and people telling me overseas how articulate he is. I'm like, are you high? Have you ever seen him go off script when the teleprompter's off and he tries to just speak from his heart? The guy's evil. He just has a dark soul. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Barack Obama is one of the least bright people out there. He's just clever at doing mischievous things. He's a grifter.
He's very good at what he does.
He's a very good grifter. Absolutely. 100% grifter. Yep. Now look, it's I don't know what to tell you about lasers from space. I know about woodpeckers from space. I don't know about lasers from space.
No, I don't know. Like I said, I'm not saying she's credible. I'm not saying she's not credible. She's in a better and superior position over me to know whether there's lasers in space being used like that. Or she could have just got caught up all the way Trump did in the debate about they're eating the pets, and there's no proof to it, but he made the claim, and it's just one of those deals. And then there's people coming out saying, yeah, Haitians do eat cats.
Well, it all stems from people saying their pets disappeared, and that it took a life of its own. You have to run things down. So I didn't repeat that story, but look, I mean, little Timmy Walt's stolen valor is allowed to forgive the fact that he celebrated going to communist China and the oppression of democracy and liberty. And, he lied about it. He said he was there during Tiananmen Square, and he didn't. And he's, just a knucklehead, and he gets away with it. So why can't Trump get away with misstating what happened in Springfield?
Sorry about that, Todd. I did not see. I've been looking over here for you, but it doesn't overlap. So
yeah, something doesn't show up there, John, because you're sending me text messages at 14 after, and I'm on air talking. You're like, I'm waiting on you.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, no, I was just waiting on standby there, listening to what you guys are talking about, and yeah, I don't think that there's any of these major cloud seedings going on. Everybody talking about. It reminds me of watching G.I. Joe in the 1980s with the Cobra and their weather dominator and all this stuff. I'm seeing it on social media, like crazy. I've had to ignore several people, block a few people, or actually stop following them. Actually, just because I don't want to see any more nonsense of it's cloud seeding, it's the government's doing all this stuff. It's like you're giving your government way too much credit. You're giving science way too much credit.
Yeah, if you ever worked in this government, you would know better.
There goes 50% of our audience, Todd. Thank you. You just chased off 50% of our audience.
No, listen, this government can't launch rockets. We have to rely on Soviets or now Elon Musk. We can't rely on Boeing. We've seen that.
Right. Now has the government and scientists in the past, universities, whatever, done experiments? Absolutely. There's been experiments and all this stuff.
So
I think we give our government way too much credit whenever we say they can do all these great grand things, but they can't run simple everyday things. And,
they can't balance a checkbook, Todd.
Right. You can't balance the checkbook.
Okay, well, wait a minute. Do you think that there's some sort of what's it called? Darn it. Chemtrails out there. Do you think they're actually spraying something in the sky?
No, that's the vapor exhaust from jet aircraft. That's naturally occurring.
Right. Yeah. To see a jet aircraft that high and you see the condensation come off of it, then to say, it's chemicals like Delta Airlines or American Airlines or Spirit or anything.
Yeah, they're up there polluting the world for us.
Why does it never dissipate?
It does dissipate.
Contrails
it's gone in moments.
It does not. It just keeps spreading.
It dissipates. If you watch all that water's coming together in one area, and that's why you can see it, and then it dissipates. So like a big cloud, it kind of rolls.
At 34,000 feet, the temperatures.
At 1980, looking at the sky, you can see a plane going by, right? And you see the water vapors coming off the wings and stuff like that.
Still
it would leave a trail so much distance behind the plane, but after a while it would dissipate, disappear into the sky again. It would just absorb back into the sky.
They still do.
And nowadays, this stuff, man, just like clouds blowing around. It doesn't go anywhere. It just spreads out and turns the sky more white than it is blue.
At 34,000 feet, the temperature is below 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And the chemical reaction of that warm exhaust coming off, mixing with water vapor and ice, connecting with dust that's in the atmosphere. By the way, one of the reasons why the Midwest,
that's what it is. It's condensation.
Do you know one of the reasons why the Midwest is so fertile, why we have such good soil? It's not simply because of millions of years of soil buildup. That's part of it. but the United States is fertilized by minerals that are swept up in the stratosphere from the Sahara Desert.
Yep.
And it blows across the Atlantic and comes across the U.S. and fertilizes our fields, something people didn't even know about 2 decades ago.
Right.
So when that stuff gets that high and it comes over here and makes our land fertile, you got to think about the impacts. That's why the hubris of humans in this, their religion of climate zealotry, which is what I call it. Listen, humans have an impact on the environment. Absolutely.
Sure.
I mean, I remember Love Canal. I remember the Cuyahoga River catching on fire as a kid. And I remember the Sicilian American pretending to be a Native American with a tear in his eye.
I remember those ads.
Good commercial, though. It's a good commercial, though. It's fake.
It's brilliant.
They great American Indians, didn't they?
He did that little turn, and that tear was right there. It's like, oh, man, somebody put a little dropper right there. Come on.
Talk about the guilt trip, huh?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, look, that was an interesting time. I remember as a kid back in the 70s, you could get information from the Environmental Protection Agency shortly after it was created. So I was very conscious of the environment. I lived on a farm at the time. And so I'd order this stuff as free of charge. It'd come in the mail. And I learned about polychlorinated biphenyls, which go into transformers, and polybromated biphenyls, and how they are like forever chemicals, and they're almost impossible to break down. You get caught in your fatty acids, and how it gets in the water table, and how it can pollute people. I learned an awful lot. It was very useful, but you don't see me as a climate zealot. You just don't take a dump in your front yard, folks. You dispose of things properly, and we're okay.
Yep, absolutely. And you talked about the way the climate is and the way the Sahara is. The reason it's so dry and arid is because of what we call the jet stream, if you will, the weather patterns. Is why it's so arid today.
Yeah, 10,000 years ago, it was a very beautiful, lush area of the Sahara. In fact, there were still elephants and lions there in Romans' time. That's just a couple thousand years ago. Not even a couple thousand years ago.
Yep, absolutely.
A couple thousand years ago. Yeah,
but I don't give the government way too much credit that they just don't deserve. I mean, I've served 20 years in the Army. I served 6.5 years, actually 10.5 if you count my staff time at the White House. Holding the highest clearance that we have, I think I would have probably seen or heard something. It's like we give way too much credit to what's going on in our society. Reality is your government's really run by some 20s and 30-year-olds. It's not really elected or high level appointed officials.
Yep. And they don't know anything. They're Georgetown graduates, Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies, and they're all coming out with milk dripping behind their neck. They're staffers on the National Security Council. They're staffers at all these agencies, and they don't know squat, most of them. Some are very talented, but they don't know what they don't know, and they get put positions of authority, and some of them act very arrogantly and dismissive of people actually know what they're talking about and the experts, and we make stupid policy decisions as a consequence.
Right.
Stop putting your patronage hires in positions that have authority and start putting competent people in there. Loyal, competent people.
Yeah, and you got to think a lot of these staffers, these senior staff people, they stay in Washington for decades upon decades, and they don't leave. They'll go from think tank to the private sector to an administration, whether it's Republican or Democrat, depending on what party affiliation. They're always in and out, revolving door. They don't have any major life experience out in the real world to give you any real advice. But these are people that are driving policy that your president's putting in as law, or staffers, if you will, on Capitol Hill, writing legislation that affects every aspect of your life. It's 20 and 30-year-olds.
And it's not just legislation, it's foreign policy decisions. These are people that have no foreign policy experience, and they're the ones that are making. I remember Russ Feingold's arrogant jerk staffers. I had to go brief his staffers, and the disrespect, the rudeness. They had never been to Africa. They knew nothing about Africa, and they're dictating to me and telling me I don't know what I'm talking about. Of course, they were completely wrong. And not only just tell me I'm wrong, but they were so rude, disrespectful, which, by the way, is why I know I wasn't allowed to go in the Capitol building on January 6th, because you don't have a badge. I had one then, but not on January 6th. So obviously I didn't enter that building. But no, but seriously. So folks, you are listening to Common Sense Conservatives, your weekly dose, your weekly jab, not the one recommended by Dr. Fauci and the evil gurus over at the National Institute for Health, but actually the ones recommended by Common Sense Americans, Patriots, right here on WSMN 1590 on your AM dial, 95.3 on your FM dial, and you can catch us on the internet at wsmn.live. Once again, that doesn't stand for wild and silly Minnesotans, but rather WSMN in southern New Hampshire, wsmn.live. My co-host every Wednesday night, Todd Grosvenor, in the studio there in Nashua, New Hampshire, and Todd McKinley, my brother-in-arm over there in East Tennessee, a place I'm sure is still suffering a bit from Helene. I'm sure you got hit with a lot of water over there.
Yep, a lot of water still recovering. Going to be months and weeks. We had interstates actually wiped out in major parts. A lot of state routes and local roads, bridges washed out. People are still missing. Probably dozens, if not hundreds, of people probably still miss. I don't know the exact number right now. We've had a lot of local, state, and federal officials on the ground, mostly state and local people coming together, banding together. A lot of nonprofits coming out to help. But yeah, a lot of county devastation here in Northeast Tennessee for sure. And then, of course, to have people that are in power in Washington, D.C. to send, billions upon billions of dollars overseas and send pennies down here to Northeast Tennessee, Western North Carolina, and others. It's very sad and disheartening. And, leads me to believe that the person we're going to need to elect is not Kamala Harris, but is Donald J. Trump, because I can guarantee you some things are going to probably get done. And J.D. Vance was actually here, I think, a week and a half ago to tour some of the damage in Southern Virginia there with Governor Youngkin. And I think probably a few Tennessee state representatives were probably close by as well.
Well, Trump was in Western North Carolina and North Georgia as soon as it was possible to get in there, and he was ahead of the administration by nearly a week. He was in there within 24 or 48 hours of the storm clearing, and brought relief supplies, bought a trailer of things, talked to Elon Musk to get Starlink, and then we're getting reports from Elon Musk and from others who are on the ground who are trying to get Starlink that the government is actively trying to prevent people from getting Starlink. And then we also know that Mayor Pete told people they weren't allowed to fly drones. You know what? You could shove it, Mayor Pete. You could take it. You could take this, not this job. You can take your nonsense and shove it. We're not here as your serfs. We are here as free citizens of this republic. And you serve at our pleasure and not for much longer, buddy.
Yep, you got that right. Yeah, a few more days, and we're going to be seeing a true lame duck administration scramble for the door. That's for sure.
All right, guys.
Where are they going to land? Who knows, though.
Yeah, well, they'll land at Netflix and K Street and
the revolving door,
the Brookings Institution, places like that.
Yep, the revolving door.
All right, so gents, it's November 9th. No, excuse me, October 9th. Excuse me. The election's right around the road. I am now very confident in an electoral tsunami. Not just a landslide, but I'm beginning to be convinced of a tsunami. We are seeing unprecedented things here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. First off, record number of Democrats have deregistered as party members in advance of this election, and Republicans have surged to a record number. In many counties here, courtesy of lots of people like Scott Pressler on the ground, we now have more Republicans registered in counties that have never had more Republicans than Democrats. Now, that doesn't need necessarily a majority because you have independents that aren't registered as a party member. We've also seen lots of reports of mass defections of Democrats taking place in Philadelphia. I'll believe it on Election Day when I see it. But the reality is that Kamala Harris is in a lot of trouble. The path to 270 for Kamala Harris, in my estimation, and I do these election maps every day, is impossible without Pennsylvania. She can run everything else that she's expected to run and take the battleground states. Without Pennsylvania, she loses the election. Trump has a path to victory without Pennsylvania. It's harder, but it's possible. But she cannot win the election without Pennsylvania, and they know it. The Democrats and their PACs have spent $170 million in Pennsylvania. Trump and the Republicans have spent $150 million. Can you believe that? A third of $1 billion spent in one state alone. That tells you how important those 19 electoral votes we have are.
That's the swing state of swing states right there. It looks like Trump may have Arizona wrapped up, and I say he's leading by like a point and a half or something.
Georgia's
he's had Georgia and North Carolina.
Georgia's but we can't say North Carolina because people are dead. There's no polling stations. Now they're trying to undermine the election. So I was comfortable with North Carolina until the storm hit.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable that people are so angry that they're not going to vote for her, but they have to be alive and able to get to the polls. So North Carolina, but Georgia is gone. The Democrats can't take Georgia. There's no chance. Trump is so far ahead there, it's crazy. Michigan has trended in Trump's favor. Pennsylvania has trended in Trump's favor. Nevada is the one that Democrats seem to claim they're still going to get, but I don't see how they get Nevada with all the rich people out there that own casinos and own businesses. I went to Vegas Golden Knights. Everybody sitting around me was a multimillionaire. Everyone. I mean, they keep a small number of seats that aren't allowed to be season ticket holders so they can make them available. So, regular people can buy a ticket for $100 like me. But all around me are people, I own this. I provide slot machines to casinos. I have, I do the linen for hotels, and they're all multimillionaires. And then you have the service industry, which is what Vegas lives off of, the service industry. Those people don't want to pay taxes on their tips. They don't want to pay. And then you also got a lot of retirees out there, and they don't like paying taxes under Social Security. I don't know how Trump possibly loses Nevada in this election. So the Democrats seem comfortable they're going to get it, but I don't think so. So, yeah, I think Arizona is going for Trump. And I think we're going to see some interesting things. I would love to see what the rally looks like in California this week. And I think he's going this weekend to California. It's his first trip out there, if I'm not mistaken, because when Biden was still in the race, with Trump never having gone to California, the polls were averaging 49 to 49, which is a shocker. No Republican has won California since 1988. Not a single Republican. And the thing is that, Trump's lost that state against Hillary Clinton by 5 million votes. 5 million votes, which was the entire difference in the election in the popular vote. So if Trump, now I don't know what it's like now. I've seen no polls since Biden left the race. And I suspect because Kamala's from there, and a bunch of wackadoodles, it's plus a lot of conservatives that fled the state, that they'll still win California. I don't think he's going to win it, but it would be interesting to see him do better in the popular vote out there.
Well, right now in California, according to 270 to win, she's leading by 25.6%. That's on an average of 3 polls. Last poll was September 30th.
So if she's winning by 25 points, it's like 62 to 38 or something like that.
Tell you in a second here. It is her 59.3 to his 33.7. Of course, there's a little gray area there for the undecided.
Yeah. Now, he's not going to win California. There's no way. But if he can gain a lot of votes out there to close the popular vote margin, because, they're going to riot in the streets if they win the popular vote but lose the election.
So Sean asked an important question here, and this is the question of questions. Will they be using rigged voting machines? That's a concern, but I think Trump has put some plans as far as poll watchers and things like that. He's got his he's built teams and stuff trying to counterbalance that.
Yeah, look, I'm a judge of elections here in Pennsylvania, a battleground state, most important battleground state, and we have Dominion machines. I heard a lot of stuff about Dominion. I'm not a fan of a lot of things, but what's not told about these machines, and now every state's got their own machines, their own different ways of doing it. What's not told is that there are paper ballots. The paper ballots are fed the machine, and all the paper ballots are retained. So manual count, and in fact, manual audits do happen, but not for everything. But a manual count is possible. All the data is stored electronically. It's stored in a compact flash. There's backup secure power supply, so it runs off a battery if the power's not working in a wall. And the whole thing is secured. There's serial number tabs. You'd have to have an awful lot of people colluding to cheat here. I can't speak for anywhere else. I'm just telling you here. I'm telling you, it's virtually impossible. Nothing's impossible, but I have complete confidence in that the votes that are cast in my polling station by over 5,000 voters potentially are legitimate, and I have no concerns about the authenticity of them. What I do have concerns about is the media falsely reporting a 99% return rate for a county when I know that only about a third of the ballots have been turned in. And the county doesn't have the vote total until we drop off the compact flashcards, the printed out tapes, and all the ballots sorted out and put up in bank vault sacks and all that. Then we drop it off at a central point, and it's taken to the courthouse. One of them is at the courthouse, another one's at like Department of Transportation. Then that stuff gets there. Then they have to open each of those up. Then they have to load them. They have to look at it. There's no way that 11:30 at night, when I've just dropped these things off at 10:45, that the media can say 99% of the votes in this county have been accounted for. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Because number one, they haven't even released or counted the absentee or the mail-in ballots, which don't get counted until the polls close. So it's just, look, the media, they're evil.
Oh,
evil.
they speculate it. They're trying to run the law of averages, and so they run it like if somebody's been leading by so many points, they figure they're going to end with so many points, and then they'll call it even though the votes aren't finished.
No, we saw that before. We seen it previous elections where they, like in Florida in 2000, they called the election for Al Gore, and the Panhandle was still voting because it's on a different time zone. Right. Shameful conduct.
That was way wrong. It was way wrong. But you do look at certain counties and precincts that are kind of the bellwethers of which way things are going. And if they go a certain way, Republican or Democrat, you can kind of judge the entire state based on some of those models. No,
I'm not disputing projections. You can make pretty accurate projections. What I'm disputing is news media saying that 99% of the voting ballots have been turned in and accounted for.
That's wrong.
When I have the second largest precinct in the entire county by a wide margin. Nobody has like more than 3,000 after mine. There's one larger down in York and then ours, and then they're all much lower. And there's no way, and I know because at the location, they track who's turned stuff in. I can see because I have to sign the log. And, when only 1/3, now some of the votes went to the other or the other location, but there's just no way. And I saw that twice, 2 elections now. I came back and they're claiming 99% of the ballots are in. That's just nonsense. Yeah. They may be projecting that's what the result's going to be, and that's true. But you can't say the votes are in.
Yeah, that I agree with what you're saying for sure. But just making a prediction is a different thing than what you were talking about. Sorry.
All right. So after Pennsylvania, gentlemen, what do you think is the biggest challenge for Trump? What state? It's going to be not the hardest, but the biggest challenge for him to win it?
I would say Michigan.
I'm with you.
Yeah, Michigan's tough.
That was it.
Yeah, I'm with you. It's hard to predict what's going to happen in Michigan because you've got a lot of angry Democrats, especially Arab Americans, particularly Muslim Arab Americans, although a lot of the Arabs in Michigan are Christians that came, a century ago from Lebanon and Syria and Israel. So you've got a lot who are very angry about the Palestinian response from this administration, and some that just aren't going to vote. And then you've got a lot of auto workers who are angry, and you don't know if they're going to vote for Trump. But you've got a lot of inner city people who vote based on identity, white and black. So,
she was leading them by quite a few points not too long ago. And right now it's Michigan's, she's only leading by 0.4% on an average of 7 polls.
Well, here in Pennsylvania, Casey had a 58-42 lead. It's neck and neck now. It's 49-49 in the Senate race.
Yeah, and this is where you got to get those rural precincts out to vote. You got to get the people that don't live in the large cities out to vote to counter the steal that can go on in some of those larger cities, if you will, because that's where Democrats make all their votes up right there, especially in a close election. It comes down to the wire. Voting, the polls have closed. They always find those votes in these large Democrat-controlled precincts somehow, and it's always just enough votes to get by, right?
Well, in 2016, anecdotally, because I just come back to the States in 2015 from Africa, I traveled all over. So I traveled into Kentucky and Tennessee. I went to Fort Campbell, saw my brother down in Nashville. I was in Maryland, Virginia, D.C., Delaware, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, all over the East Coast. And anecdotally, I only saw 2 Hillary Clinton signs ever. I saw Trump signs everywhere I went. Now, this election, I've seen some Harris Waltz signs, but they're outnumbered by at least 40-1 or 60-1 Trump signs, maybe more. So there may be some signs, but it's a very small number. And I'm talking about all over central Pennsylvania. So this is, this thing should be in the bag for Trump. The media are lying about the election, which could influence the outcome. It could actually change the outcome, but they're lying about everything. And they are giving her a free pass. They are not. I mean, look, Tim Waltz is such a shady character. This is a guy who's never led anything, not even a kindergarten creche, and he lied about his military service. He lied to get out of a DUI about his military service. You want to talk about reprehensible. That's not acceptable. He misled people by allowing them to believe that he was a combat veteran and that he contributed to the campaign when he was actually pulling guard duty in Europe. Now, that's an honorable profession, but you have to be honest. I was pulling guard duty in Italy, and we had a great time going to the trattorias after work. That's what he needs to be honest about. And he's lied about what's happened in his state. The man had an $18 billion state surplus and raised taxes. Who raises taxes when you have a surplus like that? That's insane. Right. You cut taxes because you're obviously overtaxing people.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, you should cut taxes. Here in Tennessee, we run fairly good surpluses. We got a rainy day fund, and people are thinking, it's great to live here and everything like that, which I agree with. But at the same time, it's like, why do you have all this additional money, and what are you doing with it that's positive?
Well, look, you don't have income tax, right?
It's true.
So, I mean, what are people complaining about? I'd love to not have income tax.
Oh, right. I mean, but they get their money in other ways. I mean, there's other taxes.
Oh, yeah, there's fees and this, that, and the other. So, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, as long as you're doing things that are positive with it, that the people can generally benefit, not pie in the sky projects that, it's like, oh, the governor wants this or this person wants that. No, things that just make sense that you need to take care of. I could see that, but that overtaxing the people year after year after year, I can't get on board with any of that for sure.
Well, no, 100%. I don't disagree with you. Did you guys see that Twitter and Elon Musk caved?
Oh, tell me this. What's going on?
What, towards Brazil or what's going on?
Yeah, towards Brazil. That's correct.
No, I did not see that. I figured that he didn't have a choice. I mean, their government pretty much banned him.
Well, there is a choice. You simply don't do business in Brazil.
Right.
That's my thoughts.
Right.
Yeah, no, they caved. They removed the accounts that they were told they had to remove, so they've silenced free speech. So when Elon Musk talks about his platform being free speech, once again, as I've cautioned before, it's not. It's selective free speech. I'm not a fan of Alex Jones necessarily, but to my knowledge, his Twitter account is yet to be restored.
Wait a minute. Now, they made a law in Brazil that banned him or prohibits him from broadcasting or having his platform there, right? Or doing business.
No. Their Supreme Court justice argued that he was in violation of the law because he refused to remove accounts that the government said were not legitimate accounts. Who's the government to decide that?
Right. Yeah, these are legitimate accounts basically that was needling the government that probably had inside information that they didn't want out there, and that's why they did that.
So you're saying Elon Musk now is doing business in Brazil since he did as he was told by their government.
Correct. They stood up for a short period of time, and now they've caved. They've paid the fines. They've hired the lawyer they were told to be responsive to the government to take people's accounts down. So now X in Brazil, whenever they're told to by their masters in the Brazilian socialist communist government, will remove people in Brazil from using Twitter. So they caved. They caved.
Yeah, reprehensible.
That ain't right. That's not right.
That's not, but they did it. And I've always warned people, look, I mean, Elon Musk, a fantastic, amazing guy. And I'm glad he's on board with the Trump train and all this other stuff. But the guy is not the free speech advocate that he claims to be.
Elon Musk is a leftist. Sorry, man, I just cut you off.
That's all right.
But
the internet does it to me a lot.
It happens to you a lot. He was a leftist that he's come around, but he still believes in things like global warming. He still buys the leftist rhetoric on global warming. He doesn't really see it the way you and I do.
Right, because he's not a true conservative and he's not a true libertarian. He's a wackadoodle who's incredibly brilliant. I mean, that's what most entrepreneurs, they're wackadoodles who are willing to take risk and have ideas and they're determined to follow through that most people don't have the courage to do. I mean, look, look at people in the past, Cornelius Vanderbilt,
right?
And look at Andrew Carnegie and the steel industry, and look at the Rockefellers and petroleum and all these other people who took things to the next level. Look at Heinz, but Heinz did it actually in a benevolent fashion for us, but that wasn't his intent. H.J. Heinz was trying to drive his competition out of business, and so you know how he did it? There were no standards for food safety. Heinz invented them, not the government. The government didn't invent these standards. H.J. Heinz produced a ketchup that was consistent, that was reliable, that tastes the same everywhere, and had a long shelf life, and had consistent packaging. And that had never been done before. And people trusted his brand. Long before the government came through and said you can have this many calories and you have to label it this way. It could shove that where the sun don't shine, U.S. government. This was the private sector self-regulating, and he did it not because he's a great humanitarian, but because he wanted to drive his competition out of business. And it worked. H.J. Heinz, 57 varieties, became the biggest condiment and one of the largest food manufacturers on the planet. Unfortunately, Teresa Heinz Carey, the African-American who married into the Heinz family, when her husband died, a senator from Pennsylvania, she inherited tons of that corporation and then sold us down the river to Brazilian companies. It's not even an American company anymore. Anheuser-Busch, owned by Brazil, Belgium. H.J. Heinz, owned by Brazil, Belgium. Kraft, owned by Brazil, Brazil. None of these companies are American. Chrysler, owned by the Italians. None of these iconic American brands are actually American.
What is Brazil, Belgium? What are you talking about? Because I thought Budweiser bought out by a Belgian company, but Belgian beer.
AB InBev is a Brazil / Brussels company. It's flagged in both places. It was a merger of Brazilian and InBev. So it all started with InBev, and that was a merger of Brazilian and Belgian interest. And then they added other brands, and they became the world's largest, and they own Anheuser-Busch. So none of those are American brands. They're not owned by Americans.
I was terribly disappointed when Budweiser sold out because you're right. It was an American brand, and I enjoyed the fact I liked Budweiser beer, and I pretty much gave up on them at that point in time. Then I went back to drinking it because I was kind of missing it. And then that whole thing happened with well, you know what happened. I don't have to tell you what happened. We all know what happened.
Right.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, our industry has been sold down the river by the people who run these corporations, and they did it over the objection of shareholders. Look, I've been a shareholder in so many companies over the years that I've been screwed out of. We had CanStar, which is a Canada-based company that produced Bauer skates for ice hockey and sticks, and then came up with rollerblades and all these other things. They were a fantastic company, highly profitable, growing by leaps and bounds. And then the corporate executives, I had shares that sold us out to Nike, and we didn't get anywhere near what we could have made out of the investment. I used to own Starter. If you remember back in the early 1990s, Starter was synonymous with football jerseys. And they're the ones who produced all the NFL jerseys and all these other brands. And that was bought out by Nike, if I remember correctly. And it was for a song. I used to own the Rainforest Cafe. And the guys who ran the company ran it into the ground, burying it in debt by expanding too fast. And then they got a sweetheart deal and a buyout, which frankly, if regulars looked at it, somebody's going to jail. But the regular shareholders like, I got screwed. Now, I didn't, because when it dropped to almost nothing, I bought a whole bunch of shares. And then when it went up to a couple dollars a share that it sold out, it balanced out my losses. But a lot of people lost their shirt. And Rainforest Cafe is still in business. And at Disney and also in London and other places. So look, I'm cognizant of how this stuff works. It's really sad to see American corporations being sold out, from shareholders, being sold out from the employees, being sold out from America. And like I said, Chrysler, Anheuser-Busch, Heinz, these aren't American brands. They're foreign owned, every one of them, and many more. Chrysler's owned by Stellaris, which is an Italian company.
What is
Monsanto?
Yeah. I can't say it.
Monsanto's American owned. Most of the agriculture companies are still American owned. It's the other things. It's the high tech things that they try to get their teeth into. We don't build chips in this country anymore for the most part.
It's true.
South Korea is the world's largest shipyard.
Are we bringing that back?
Well, look, that's a misnomer. I need to clarify, people. We produce a ton of computer chips in this country. We've got Micron technology based in Idaho. We've got Intel based in California, but with plants in New Mexico and California. We produce a buttload of chips in this country, and somehow that gets lost on people. The other thing is that people talk about our manufacturing sector has disappeared. It hasn't. The employment in the manufacturing sector is way down because of automation, AI, robots, all kinds of things. Just better technology. But the percentage of GDP, while it was much higher a long time ago, it's been consistently between 16 and 18% for decades now. So we haven't been hollowed out. We still produce a lot of stuff. The thing is, we don't produce a lot of the key cutting edge things that we need to. And in fact, we have to turn to Taiwan and Japan for many semiconductors that should be produced here, but they're being produced over there. And they're being produced over there by American interest. That's the shameful part. Selling us down the river.
I think we keep our new technologies and stuff here, and our older technologies that we outsource them.
Yeah,
I think that's what's going on, because they got some kind of super semiconductors and stuff like that I think we produce here.
Oh, we do. Look, and we still lead in world technology, but we definitely have some gaps, and we definitely have some serious problems here.
Well, we have issues because we take our stuff over there and produce it over in China, and then they reverse engineer it and turn the screws to us. It's dumb.
Well, yeah. What's your point?
Yeah. Well, that was it. It's dumb. I kind of announced it right there at the end.
No, I think you made your point. Look, why do we subsidize ethanol? Why do we do that? First off, where are the greenies? Where are the climate zealots? The amount of pesticide, the amount of nitrogen and fertilizer that's poured into the Great Plains states in the Midwest that flows down through tributaries, washed off the topsoil into the Missouri and Mississippi River Basin, down to the Gulf of Mexico, creating algae blooms, killing wildlife, and polluting the environment. Where are they up in arms about that? And we have monoculture, which is harmful to our bees for pollinating. And we have monoculture, which is susceptible to disease. And we just have fields and fields and fields of corn. Why? So we can make ethanol? I get it for cattle feed, but for ethanol? That doesn't make any sense. We've got all the petroleum in the world. Why do we need that nonsense? All right, folks, we'll catch you next hour. Stick around. This news is up next. Second hour of Common Sense Conservatives after the news break. Cheers.
WSMN 1590, WSMN 95.3 FM Nashua. Listen, watch, and stream at wsmn.live.
This is a special report from ABC News, Hurricane Milton. I'm Mike Dubusky. Hurricane Milton is now about 35 miles off the western coast of Florida, expected to make landfall in just a few hours. President Biden at the White House earlier says he told the Department of Defense to pre-stage search and rescue crews as close to the storm as they can get.
We've already approved emergency declarations for Florida. We have thousands of federal personnel on the ground. We've staged and are ready to go. We have 20 million meals, 40 million liters of water.
Pentagon spokesman Major General Pat Ryder told ABC News about some of the other resources the federal government is readying.
Capabilities they'll be bringing include things like high water vehicles, helicopters to support the transportation of commodities like food and water, search and rescue, and then as well as providing staging areas for logistics support.
Milton is currently a Category 3 hurricane. This is ABC News. Could be a bad sign for Google in its latest legal battle with the Justice Department.
Having won the first round in court with a federal judge ruling that Google is a monopoly, the Justice Department now signals it intends to force a court-ordered breakup of the company, possibly affecting Google's Chrome web browser and its Android operating system. The company responds, saying such a plan could have unintended consequences for consumers, risking their security and privacy, especially if Google is forced by the court to share user search data with competitors.
ABC's Stephen Portnoy. Just in time for the holidays, Walmart is unveiling its own artificial intelligence, generative AI, augmented reality, and immersive commerce platforms. The retail giant says together, the technology will create personalized, convenient, and engaging shopping experiences. Federal Reserve is now minutes from the September meeting show officials debated whether to cut rates by half a point or a quarter. They ended up going with half. I'm Mike Dubusky, ABC News.
Whether you own a local business or a global one, you're always looking for ways to position your operation to create opportunities and move on them faster. With Bank of America, you get access to experts, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful, you'll make every move matter, locally and globally. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Copyright 2024 Bank of America NA.
Oh no, stomach issues again?
Stomach issues?
Who are you?
Your pancreas. I could be the real reason for your diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or loose oily stools.
I thought it was my stomach.
People often do, but any of these symptoms could mean having a condition called exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, or EPI. With EPI, the pancreas doesn't release enough enzymes to break down food, but EPI is manageable. Use the symptom checker on identifyepi.com and speak with your doctor. That's identifyepi.com. Sponsored by AbbVie.
Welcome to Campers in RV of Merrimack, New Hampshire for our monster of a sale. Get ready for this spine-tingling savings event on our entire inventory of travel trailers, fifth wheels, and motorhomes, and we're scaring up some fantastic deals just for you. With falling interest rates and unbelievable prices, it's a combination to die for. We have RVs that are perfect for spooky movie nights and ghost story sessions around the campfire. So don't miss October's spectacular savings sale event at Campers in RV in Merrimack, New Hampshire. Visit us today, if you dare.
Continuing the legacy started.
Good Lord, folks, what's going on in those commercials? First off, scaring the bejesus out of me with EPI. What the heck that is? That sounds like something I don't want to get. And now Count Chocula or Count Track, whoever that was there, is scaring the bejesus out of me.
Camper World.
I was just checking in on the storm surge, guys, and in Charlotte Harbor down there, which is just north of Fort Myers there in one of those big inlets, those bays there. My goodness, the storm surge is already up above the guy's knees. He's standing out there in the storm. Probably not the smartest thing, but that's from the AccuWeather trying to bring us the news. But it's made landfall, and it's hitting Florida hard, the West Coast. You know, that surge is predicted to be so strong up to 15 feet high in places of the west coast of Florida, the entire length and breadth of the west coast. But the Atlantic coast is also supposed to get 3 to 5 foot surges too. That's a powerful storm to blow the water around the end of the Key West and hit the west coast or the east coast. That's crazy, guys.
Yeah, wow, it's a big storm. I mean, it's going to pretty much cover the whole state of Florida. I mean, the eye itself is going to take out the center part, but it's going to be tropical storm conditions through the bottom and the top.
Is this like Moas, the mother of all storms?
Yeah,
right.
Mother
Yeah.
of all storms.
It's funny because they talk about these storms as if we've never had these, but they had a historic storm down there, hurricane, about a century ago in Florida, and they seem to have forgotten about it. And as a kid, I was talking about this in my program the other day. I remember as a kid, Hurricane Agnes. And that was a storm that had the worst impacts of that were actually in Pennsylvania, followed by Maryland. I was a kid. Anne Arundel County is one of the worst places to hit. I remember that storm. It was unbelievable. So much rain, the wind. It was just, and it left so much devastation at the time. In the early 1970s, the damage was over $2 billion. You can map that out with inflation today and see how large a storm that was. Unbelievable. And of course, remember, the population was much lower then, far fewer homes, much less infrastructure. So the impact of storms today is magnified by the overpopulation or the greater population density, and of course, the consequent development that comes along with it. So a lot of places were hit by these storms in the past, and trees got knocked down, streams overflowed, riverbanks, things, mud collapses, but nobody lived there. It wasn't a problem. But Hurricane Agnes was pretty brutal. Imagine if it hit today, that same storm. It would be devastating.
Yeah, and at the same time, you got populations that are building, say, houses or apartment buildings and so forth that aren't used to storms like that, storm surges and so forth. All of a sudden, you get a major hurricane that blows through, and your code doesn't tell you have to build to that standard. And next thing you know, these things are collapsing in states that wouldn't get a storm like Florida. So
exactly, Florida has those building codes. Anything built in the last 30 years or so is actually going to survive this storm pretty well, even with 160 mile an hour winds. That's because they have to meet code. Unless someone cheated on the code, they're going to survive that most likely. Whereas in Maryland, Chesapeake Bay, Pennsylvania, the Hudson Valley, New York, the people don't build homes there for those standards because that's not something you experience. So if you get hit with something like that, game over. I mean, look at who would have thought that entire towns in Asheville and other places in Western North Carolina would just wash away. Just wash away. I mean, the amount of rain that landed is just absolutely insane in such a short period of time. This is biblical. Yeah, well, it's mountainous, but this is biblical. So the whole past 2 weeks, I've been driving around looking at spots on hillsides and elevated land and making sure it's far away from creeks in case I decide to buy another house.
That's it.
Keeping that in mind.
That's what I was going to say. It's mountainous, and it's like Arizona when they have rain to get these flash floods with water runoff and stuff, and from the higher points down. And that's what happened in North Carolina, Tennessee, is water running down and stuff, and funneling into these rivers, and they overflow. And of
course, in Arizona, the situation is exacerbated because there's virtually no vegetation in most of the place, and you get those flash floods that are just brutal, and they come fast.
Well,
now this was the same way, but at least normally a storm like this, it isn't this much rain, and you can absorb a lot of it. But it was just too much. This was biblical. I mean, this is like Noah. I saw Noah with giraffes floating by in an ark.
Yeah. Right. So Arizona and stuff out west too. The ground is very dry, so it doesn't absorb the water right away.
Right.
It's also oftentimes very hard packed from baking and for a long period of time. And like I said, not much vegetation. I mean, mesquite bushes don't really slow down torrential rainstorms.
Those are the tumbleweeds.
No, those are the ones you like to, get that mesquite wood to make that barbecue. That's some tasty stuff, man. Yeah. And if you're really clever and if you don't tell the authorities, you could probably get yourself a javelina and you can put that over the mesquite and have a good meal. Javelinas, those little wild pigs out there. And there's a lot of them. I remember we're out there on patrol as lieutenants at Fort Huachuca. We had night vision goggles. We're looking around like, wow, eyes everywhere. Same thing I saw in Germany when I was a lieutenant. That was crazy. We went out to the MKT. That's the mobile kitchen. Todd would know what that is. You go out, you climb up in there, get your food handed over to you. They got the stoves and everything in there. And the MKT, it's a larger site. It was our battalion headquarters. Anyway, one of this other guy and I were on shift at night. We're both lieutenants. He said, let's go get some food because they have soup out there. So you can get food during the night and get some juice. So we walked out there and he had night vision goggles. It was low illumination, but I can see pretty well in the dark, especially back then. So I said, you take the night vision goggles and I'll walk without them because I can see. And we get back by the kitchen area and he's trying to pour some soup and he's like, what's that? I said sounds like some boar.
Yeah.
What do you mean boar? And he had turned off the thing and flipped up the night vision device because we're chatting next to each other. And, the mobile kitchen is aluminum. So there's a little bit of light reflecting off the moon there. So it's, a little bit of illumination. So he flipped it back down and he turned it on. He leaned down and he turned it on. And he jumped like 6 feet straight back in the air because there were like a dozen pigs right there. Scared the bejesus out of him. I'll never forget that. But
How big did they get?
Oh, they get big, man. They get big. But this was like a sow and her piglets, and there were like a dozen of them, and then there were a couple other pigs there. I didn't see any boars. They're probably around. You see them because those tusks appear. But no, it was they were looking for free lunch. That's what they're there for because they smelled the food.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You gotta be careful. Some of those piglets don't know any better, and they'll come up to you. And next thing you know, mama runs up to you, and it's like you got to be able to jump higher than mama can move quick.
Because the little ones are so cute. They got little spots all up and down their back, like a fawn, a deer.
Yeah, they don't know they don't know that they're supposed to run with their mom, and they'll just like, oh, he's feeding me, and then here comes mom right back at you. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was actually that rotation was kind of a sad one. We had someone that walked out in the dark, and we were in the southwest corner of Hohenfels, and there's some cliffs out there. People don't realize they're cliffs unless you've been at the bottom because there's trees up on the top. And it was cold morning, and I don't know if they slipped or whatever, but a soldier fell to his death.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that kind of put a damper on the exercise. So that was 1990.
Well, if you're walking around in the dark without night goggles on and you didn't see the boar, then I guess you probably didn't see the edge of that cliff.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But I'm thinking, I look around before I set my tent up, make sure I'm not in a spot where vehicles can drive through. In the Gulf War, we lost, not us, but in our sister battalion or the sport battalion, lost a couple of soldiers, including a master sergeant who was driven over by a tanker, a refueler, because they put their sleeping bags down on the ground next to their vehicle. And they weren't using ground guides and low illumination during the conflict, and they drove right over and crushed them. What a horrible way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's absolutely right. Yeah, that's why you try not to sleep out when people are moving and stuff like that. You try to stay either in the vehicle or stay in an area that's designated for sleeping.
Well, our brigade commander had been a Vietnam veteran, of course, at that stage, 1990. You still have the older guys that were in Vietnam. And his name was Higgins, and he was an infantryman back then. Now he's in charge of an armor brigade. And they called him Digging Higgins because everywhere we went, we had to dig a foxhole. And I remember as lieutenant, people grousing, going, "Why are we digging foxholes? We're in tanks. Isn't that a better protection than a foxhole?" Well, there's a reason for digging those foxholes, and one of which is that people aren't going to crush you when they're in the middle of the night, sort of thing. But yeah, no, it's you always have to think safety when you're dealing with heavy equipment and things like that. I mean, these are death machines, So that's why I always tell people that's why I don't drink and drive. Because a car is a deadly weapon.
It's dangerous.
Oh, absolutely.
Being too tired and driving is just about the same as drinking and driving, too.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I went down to Houston and Dallas. I landed in Dallas, and of course, American Airlines can't pull off any flight on time. So I arrived hours and hours late. And I got my rental car just around midnight, and I had to drive to Houston. Well, that's not a 5-minute drive. And I had never driven to Houston from Dallas before, so that was a new one on me.
Wow, yeah.
And that is a pretty straight stretch for a long way down there, and boring as all get out. I drove for about an hour. I'm like, nope, rest stop. So I pulled over in a rest stop, and I got myself a nap. I slept for about 45 minutes. I was refreshed, and I took off, went off. But, I couldn't help but remember that movie, Something About Mary. When I pulled over in the rest stop. And if you watch the movie Something About Mary, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Or did you find your Nepalese coins?
No. I remember in that movie that the shrink said, rest stops at the gay bathhouse at the 90s.
Wait, what? And all the spotlights come on. Yeah.
That's why somebody turn the lights on, man. Oh my goodness. Of course, I was also thinking it might be INS, looking for illegals. Put the floodlights on. Yeah, that movie is still so funny all these years later.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
My goodness.
You guys ever heard of that ESG? Environment, social, governance, scoring
scores.
system.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
right.
You told me the scores. That's what the Chinese are perfected.
Yeah, well, that's the reason why we were talking about Dylan Mulvaney earlier. It reminded me of that because that's exactly what they do. Is they got these scoring systems on these corporations, whether they're suiting themselves to DEI and
Right.
social norms and stuff like that. So these corporations, to preserve their business and their social credit scores, are creating these DEI programs. They're
True,
being
but
coerced into it.
But what's happened is with Robbie Starbuck exposing the Tractor Supply Company, that tide has begun to turn finally, at least the appearance of it. We'll see if it actually happens in substance. But the Tractor Supply Company, Harley Davidson, and several other major American corporations were caught with that nonsense. And Robbie Starbuck is good on Robbie Starbuck is really, and thank you, by the way, Todd, you got me for an interview a few years ago, but it was an odd interview. He didn't come on camera. He just came on the phone, but I need to get him on again. But Robbie really pushed this hard. And I think he did a great job drawing attention to it. I wish I had that kind of notoriety so I could, push agendas like that too. But Robbie did a great job exposing the Tractor Supply Company, Harley Davidson. And the thing is, once you get a little bit of that attention, then people send things to you and you get more news stories, you get more breaks. You don't have to dig these things up on your own. But Robbie did a really fantastic job mobilizing support against those companies. So I don't know if we turned a corner, but I think in the war against wokeness and DEI, we may have slowed the train down and it might be coming to a stop. You know, like the pendulum might start swinging back the other way. I don't think we started to swing back the other way, but I think we're coming almost to a halt right now. At least it appears that way. You'd have to work inside the halls of all these corporations to actually know if it's true, but certainly the public faces, they don't want to be associated with DEI anymore. And that in itself is a major victory.
Yeah,
it sounds like it. Yeah. Have you ever heard of this Pact for the Future?
Yes.
That sounds like that's going to be a dangerous issue.
It is. Bunch of loonies.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's all United Nations BS, which is tied into World Economic Forum and a bunch of other things. And like this ESG thing, it's all, through World Economic Forum and United Nations and all this nonsense. And now they got this Pact for the Future. I haven't gotten to too much details on it yet, but it's all about getting and the United States is on board with it. Apparently Blinken was over there at the summit here just last month, signing us up for it. And so basically we're supposed to be creating these treaties now. And this is something listeners need to be paying attention to, because you need to contact your members of Congress about not signing off on these treaties, because they have to go through Congress. And we need to get on their hind ends about it. I don't know if it'll work or not, because Congress has this great skill of ignoring their own constituents and getting away with it because we keep voting them back in. But we need to start getting on them about these issues and looking into these things, because we're getting into this new world order. In which case they want to collect our sovereignty as a nation, which they can't rightfully or legally do because we have a U.S. Constitution that's the supreme law of the land. Treaties don't supersede the U.S. Constitution, but it is part of the supremacy clause. But I don't think that we can ever surrender our sovereignty.
Well, we certainly should be trying to surrender our sovereignty. That's crazy.
Exactly. But people need to wake up, man, and stop voting to the left, because these wackadoodles on the left, that's exactly. And we got rhinos. And I'm sorry, but some of these rhinos are leftists. We had a GOP chairwoman here in New Hampshire who turned out to be a Democrat. She just not too long ago registered herself as a Democrat. So basically she infiltrated and coerced and made a mess of the GOP, right? Then turn around, and when she's no longer chairperson, she can just go register herself for her true colors, a Democrat.
Well, look, I've up close and personal seen inside this window. Just a second, excuse me. I've seen inside this. I was invited while still the director of African Studies at the Army War College out to a conference, which I took permissive TDY, or no, I took leave, actually, I think it was, because it was not something necessarily for my job, and I didn't represent the War College. But I went out there for an organization that meets in Aspen every year. And Tom Steyer was a Democratic candidate for president. And he was running a hedge fund billionaire and with his green agenda. And most of the people out there were incredibly wealthy and were very connected. General Wesley Clark was there. I wound up in a documentary with Bo Bridges and Wesley Clark as a consequence, and Wes Clark's son, which was interesting. It was fascinating to see these incredibly uber wealthy people out there. Now, I had to fly into Denver and pay for a rental car and drive a few hours to Aspen, and they flew to the Aspen airport. When I left after my portion and my presentation and then headed out of there instead of staying for the last day, I drove, of course, Now, I didn't come in by the Aspen Airport because you come in the resort, you turn before you get the airport and go up into the hills. But when you leave, you come back down, take the right turn on the junction and head south, and you go right past the airport, and then you go through actually Aspen, Colorado. But the airport, when I went by, if there were not 80 to 120 private jets out there, then there were more. It was insane. These are incredibly wealthy people who fly all over the world, putting carbon dioxide and emissions in the air. And they deign to tell us, what's going on in the world and how we should, all be eating cat food and freezing to death inside a cave somewhere. No, it's amazing how the hypocrisy of the political left. It just shocks me. Not so much anymore, but I'd never seen it up close and personal until I got invited out there. Look, for me, it was a great experience. I mean, I was exposed to an awful lot of interesting people. And I knew one thing for sure. None of the people out there were, except for a handful of us, there were a handful of actual climatologists out there and a handful of actual energy experts out there and regional experts that were not wackadoodles who gave their presentations. And we were listened to politely and people listened and they'd have objections to it. But, if you sat around people, they were voting left no matter what, to their own. They would ride that roller coaster right into oblivion. They don't care if they look down and they see spikes at the end of the rail. They'll ride it right into the spikes. It's just possessed by leftism. It's crazy.
Yeah. And which conference were you at by chance?
It's ARA. What's the name of that thing? I can't think of it. The alternative energy. I have to look in my mail. I get invited to it every year, but I mean, I'm not going to anymore.
I think the biggest issue we're dealing with when it comes to leftist issues is things like the World Economic Forum is developing economics. All these people want to be involved because they want to be part of a winning team for economics. They you described earlier, uber wealthy. They want to be phenomenally rich, phenomenally wealthy. So they want to get involved with the programs. Mm-hmm. And in fact of the matter is, these are the programs that are choking out the American people. These are programs that are choking out working class people across the globe. Right. Yeah, and I think they're designed to.
Yep. But yeah, I've been out to Aspen a couple of times with the American Enterprise Institute whenever they've had their conference.
Yeah, I know them.
Whenever they've had their conference, I've advanced Vice President Cheney. I've actually flown out there with him once or twice when he was vice president. Mind you, he would go to AAI conferences on a regular, and I can vouch about the Gulf Streams and all this stuff at the Eagle Airport right there in Aspen. Yep. Oh yeah, big time.
It's a surprisingly large airport in the middle of a big mountain valley.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and like you said, there's a lot of ramp space for private aircraft for sure.
Oh yeah, and there were a lot of them out there. I had no idea that. Look, I knew that there were going to be a lot of people like that out there, but I mean, I didn't see them come in. I just was up there in the resort, which didn't have snow yet because it was still. I think it must have been like August or something like that.
Yeah, that's around the time they have them. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a fascinating event, but Steyer was there, and he was running for president, and he was funding his own campaign. He's a billionaire. Anyway, I listened to him, and I'm like, dude, I don't know how you became wealthy. You clearly know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and some of these people you luck into some stuff, and they get a big win, and they just parlay that into a couple of things, and it pays off for them. Then a lot of times they use other people's money that they gamble, and of course, if it pays off, hey, they make billions of dollars, they pay that back. But if they can get by without using their own money, they will, absolutely. And there's a lot of loopholes for people that are very wealthy to take advantage of, for sure. And it's perfectly legal, by the way.
Oh yeah. No, look, there's nothing wrong with using other people's money to make money. I mean, that's why people invest in things. Right. That's why we have investors. But you also have people that just luck into a fortune. And one of those people is Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban was involved in broadcast.com. They got the domain name in the early days of the internet. They had an idea that they would do high definition broadcasting before it ever existed. They were going to use it to transmit video. Back in the days, we're all still using dial-up modems, and it just didn't work. But the executives at Yahoo, desperate to grow their platform and provide other services, paid like $1 billion for broadcast.com, or over $1 billion, 1.2 billion, if I remember correctly. And he was a major shareholder. So he made like 650, 700 million, something like that was his cut off of that deal. And that's how he made his money. Then he bought the Dallas Mavericks and proved to be one of the most annoying humans on the planet as the owner.
One of them,
and then he wound up on Shark Tank, and people think he's a brilliant businessman. If you ever listen to Mark Cuban, the guy is about as bright as a box of rocks. He's unbelievably stupid.
Yeah. I mean, he does a lot of these bit parts on HBO, TV shows, and movies where he just pops in for a cameo, says something witty that somebody wrote for him, and he's back out like he's a genius. Yeah.
No, he's not. He's not. I mean, if you actually listen to what he says, it's just crazy. Um, anyway, no, but I mean, some people luck into their money. Others luck into a break. Elon Musk lucked into a break with his payment system and got paid a fortune for it. But he had talent and he had vision. He had ideas, and he went from there and he took over what became Tesla and turned it into a powerhouse and created Starlink and then bought Twitter with a consortium. That's the thing. It's lost on people. Everyone's like, Elon Musk owns Twitter. No, he doesn't. He's the guy that brought all the investors together. He's the big name, and he's the one responsible for running it. But there were lots of people who put their money in that. You take a look at all the investors, and there's quite a few investors out there that are involved in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name of this thing. I'm looking for it here, and I'm looking at my mail. I'd say I got something from them recently because it was in August. And anyway, but I get too many messages to go through every August. Look, every message. Oh, Energy Africa. That's not it. Yeah, that's a different event. I went out to Colorado for that one. That's a completely different thing. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, it's every year. I want to say it's in August, and it's out there in Aspen. So it kind of reminded me of. There it is. It's our day. That's what it is. Our day. Hang on a second. American Renewable Energy Day. Yeah, that's it. Yep, our day. Yep, that's what it is. Yeah, and so this was in 2019 when I went, and they said, "Thank you for attending the 16th annual Our Day Summit. The politics of change." Creating the new hydrogen carbon economy. So it was truly memorable for a wide variety of reasons, not the least of which was the weathering and flooding of the meeting space. Yeah, they had a problem in the building. It set a new precedent for multi-sector collaboration, networking, and building green bridges. Oh, they have I wonder if they still have a media site. Maybe I'm in a picture there if it's still up. Just trying to click on that. But yeah, so I went out there. What was amazing for me was just, there's the actual videos. Wow. There's Sally Rainey and then General Wesley Clark. And anyway, a whole bunch of people. So I wonder what else, if there's more here. Interesting. Anyway, yeah, I don't see my video up here, day 2. But yeah, wow, that's still up, that site. So it was an interesting experience. Where the heck am I? Anyway, sorry. I'm just curious now that I've got it open here. I'm just curious. But there were a lot of really wealthy people who were out there. And that was, 5 years ago now? Gee, many crickets. 5 years ago. And I get the emails all the time asking me to come out to it, but not going to happen anytime soon. Not unless somebody wants to pay for it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I know a lot of people who go to different conferences, something similar to what you're talking about. But, they'll do it on their own dime. And, of course, they'll sign up and all this stuff. And then, of course, they use that to try to create an image of themselves being part of this whole thing or whatever, even though they're just regular attendees of a conference that most people can sign up for.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they try to play that to bolster up their resume, their CV, or whatever you want to talk about. And especially in a world where people look at your social media and all that good stuff, they want to see who you're connected with. Are you legit? And they play it up to try to be legitimate. They go to things like that to get the right pictures and everything like that. Yeah, so it's very tricky with people like that. So anyway, but it's interesting to go out in places like that and watch the people try to play the room. And then you get the people who are actually there that, or people are going to come to them and talk to them. I don't need to circulate and work for them. They're going to come to me. But anyway, it's pretty wild to see those things.
No doubt about it. It's definitely interesting stuff. I tell you, I had not a similar vibe, but in some ways a little bit similar vibe with conservatives, which was a little off-putting at CPAC when I went down there a couple of years ago. It was there's a few people in the conservative crowd that are just like those leftists in their ego and their opinion of themselves.
A lot of them, yeah.
Yeah. And then a lot of really genuine people. So I met with Scott Pressler down there, and Ivan Rankin was down there. I think he's less well-known than other people. And then I also met Kevin Sorbo when I was there. And then Kevin Sorbo came on my program after that. He came through with the interview he promised. I met Dr. Malone was down there. I met him. And then I think I told you guys this before at the event, and afterwards I was, when Trump spoke, I went up on the stand back with all the cameras.
Yeah,
and
you got one.
He's like, look at those fake media back there. Look it up. And all the people in the back room know it's just show theater. And they all look at us like, oh, it felt bad for us. Cause they know that almost everybody back there with a camera in their hand is actually a conservative.
Right. So, yeah.
It's a shtick, man.
It is a shtick, yeah. Hey, that's what I wanted to say. Listen, hey, folks, this isn't what I want to say, but we have to say it because it's that time. You're listening to WSMN, 1590 AM, 95.3 on your FM dial. The Common Sense Conservatives coming your way every Wednesday night from 7 to 9 p.m. That's 1900 to 2100 for those of you in uniform. and those of you in the Scouts. But we come and give you your weekly dose of common sense. You know, that jab that Dr. Fauci doesn't want you to have. He wants you to have that other one. No, not the monkeypox jab. Wait, is that racist? No, it's not. It's the Wuhan flu and monkeypox. Anyway, if we're going to call it West Nile fever and Rocky Mountain spotted fever, we're going to stick to that. And Ebola, you're going to stick to it. Lassa fever. It's what you do. You name it colloquially after the place was first noticed in abundance. You know, it's interesting. They talk about monkeypox being racist. I never really thought monkeys were the same race as us. And then they also, oops, my connection. Am I still there?
You're still here, man. We hear you. It just
okay,
froze up a little bit.
Yeah, it's saying connection lost. But you know, they say monkeypox is racist, but they don't say anything about Marburg virus, Marburg filovirus, which is in the same family as Ebola. Very devastating hemorrhagic fever is not from Marburg, Germany, a beautiful medieval city. You know, it's actually from Uganda, DRC area, Burundi, those places like that. And that virus was transmitted to Europe by a Belgian doctor who flew up there for a medical conference back in the 1960s. And the first place it was ever really noticed was in Marburg. Therefore, it was colloquially known as Marburg virus. And so is that racist against, white Germans? Because, they didn't invent the virus, if monkeypox and Wuhan can't be said. But anyway, that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about, I've already forgotten about it already. That's a senior moment here, folks. Crept in. I went down too many rabbit holes. It was something I wanted to share. It was important.
I think you wanted to say every time they refer to us as having white privilege, that is a racist statement.
Yeah, I do want to say that, but that's not where I was going.
I know. I just thought I threw it in there while you were trying to collect your thoughts.
It might take me a little bit longer there, but there was something at the break. I was just before I announced what station we're on. I want to say about, but that really slipped in there. Anyway, that's embarrassing. But hey, as long as I don't remember who to vote for on election day.
Senior moments happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, they happen to Joe Biden pretty much every day, don't they? A continuous stream,
every 6 seconds.
Continuous stream. And didn't you like it whenever she was supposed to be speaking at a rally within like a minute or two? He stepped out at the White House press briefing room and started speaking, completely undermining everything she was going to say. Said that, she's a part of every decision. It's like, is Joe Biden really trolling, trying to
he is. He put on a Trump hat the other day. Yeah.
It seems like he's trying to undermine everything she's trying to do.
I thought that was a meme until I found out it was actually real, that he put on a Trump hat.
Did he really? So wait, basically he's endorsing Trump, just undermine her, or what's going on here?
I don't know. I think it was joking around, but
yeah. He was taking a picture with a bunch of kids, and they all had Trump shirts on. Some of them had a MAGA hat. And one of the kids, I think, gave it to him just jokingly, and he just kind of pretended like he's putting it on. But
that's funny.
Idiotic move to do that, because somebody has a camera, they're going to take a picture and they're going to use it.
Yeah, look, Joe's stupid, but sometimes he's sly like a fox, and I think that was a sly like a fox moment.
That reminds me of that time when he was giving the interview, and at the end the kid goes, "Let's go, Brandon." He jumps up, "Yes, let's go, Brandon." His wife's like grabbing him, trying to pull him back down, like, "Don't suck into that."
Yeah.
Well, I love how the fake news, when then they did that at the racetrack, and they're like, let's have Joe Biden, and they're like, hey, they're saying, let's go, Brandon. It's like, I'm standing here in front of a mostly peaceful protest in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
And a car is on fire behind you, by the way.
The entire dealership was on fire.
Yeah. So it's like there's a fire, mostly peaceful. Yeah, when they walk by you and they're not bashing somebody's brains in or busting out a window, they're peaceful in the moment. It's whenever they're actually busting out windows and burning cars, that's when they're not peaceful.
I think we're missing here is they're peaceful with each other. Yeah. You and I, not so much, but
no.
I don't know. That's that's that guy. I've never seen him again. It's interesting. I remember a few years back, David Webb was on his show in the morning, and this up and coming leftist social media phenomenon, this black woman who doesn't know, her fourth port of contact from a hole in the ground. Yeah. She comes on the program. I was actually listening to the program live that morning, and I fell over. And if you don't know who David Webb is, he's a very gravelly voiced gentleman, and she goes, now, your problem, David, is that you don't even know about your white privilege. You don't appreciate the advantage you get as being a white man.
I love it.
And he's like, excuse me? You may not know this, but I'm African American.
Yeah.
You couldn't see it because it was radio, but her jaw just hit the floor.
Whoever her producer is just messed her over by not telling her who this person is. She did no research as a host. I mean, come on.
No, she wasn't a host. No, she was calling into a show. She was a guest.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah.
Well, she should have done some research to whose program she was talking to. She was a leftist that doesn't know anything.
That's right.
And so many of them are like this. They don't know what they're talking about. And we've got conservatives like that too.
Yeah.
They just run off the mouth because they have the right bra size or they get the right jawline as a guy or whatever it is. They get attention. And they don't know what they're talking about. And so it was so embarrassing. David Webb still laughs about to this day.
What I'm hearing is that she was losing the argument. So she went to a go-to trigger mechanism and failed.
Of course. That's exactly what happened.
What she did.
Yeah.
No, she did that. And they do this all the time. They lose an argument and they try whataboutism, or they try to pull something up, It's like, it's like Joe Biden has a $2 trillion budget deficit this year. Yeah, but Trump had a budget deficit. We're not talking about Trump. That time was 4 years ago. And you had your say. Now we're talking about this year. This is the largest projected annual budget deficit in the history of the country. Trump never had a projected annual deficit. The reason he had a huge deficit is because of COVID. COVID sunk us $8 trillion. $8 trillion over the scam is what it cost us. And a lot of that was on $4 trillion of that was right there at the end of Trump's last year. Money that we gave to people for no reason whatsoever, forcing people to stay home from their jobs, virtually destroying our economy. 42 million people tossed out of work. 42 million. I say again, 42 million people. And to this day, we still have consequences. We have stunted education development by kids. We have social disorders by kids. We have people who want free rides, who are unwilling to work. Look, I dealt with that again today at the VFW. Oh my goodness. The expectations of people, what they think they're entitled to, and the complaints they make. Well, the manager's not doing this. That's your job. I had somebody complain to me about the trash can smelling, and I'm like, okay. I'm thinking, why are you telling me? I don't work here. I'm just a commander. I just happen to come by and see if the kitchen's clean. Checking up on it, just being responsible. I didn't say that. That's all in my head, and I'm thinking, the dock is 50 feet that way. The hose is out there. And the industrial soap is out there. Take your butt out there, put some hot water in there, dump some soap in there, spray it in, get the brush, scrub it out, let it air out, and then bring it back in. Don't complain to me that you don't have the trash can smells. And don't say it's a manager's job. You think the manager's job is to wipe the toilets down too? You think the manager's job come in to slice up that bread for you so you can cook? Give me a break. And look, it's not just youth. It's all age categories are like this in the 21st century. We've lost something in this country. That white Anglo-Saxon Protestant work ethic has gone to crap.
Yep, absolutely. And it's funny as you're talking about that. I've seen it in other situations where people, in veteran service organization, as an example, people will say, well, somebody should do this, or why don't we do that? And it's like you look at it. You look at them right in the meeting and say, why don't you head that project up? And they're like, well, I don't have time for it. Why did you bring it up if it's such a grand idea? And they get mad whenever you ignore them or you don't vote on their idea. It's like, if you're not going to be willing to step up and actually take some action and work on this, then why should we take on the burden of actually putting it into operation?
Well, what I find just amazing is the sloth, and then just the arrogance of people to complain about things and blame other people for things that they think is wrong, and they took no action, and they don't know what they're talking about. So last year, I had a manager, it was a temporary manager filling in, and lowered the flag for 9/11. Okay. I think it was not 9/11. I think it was when it was. I maybe get the dates wrong. I think that's around the time that Dianne Feinstein died or something like that. But anyway, the flag was lowered, and then Dianne Feinstein died. So the flag stayed down for a few days because you just keep it down for 3 days or 7 days like that.
Right.
And then a few months later at a meeting, well, so-and-so hates veterans. How so? Well, disrespecting veterans. How? Well, that's a serious concern. I mean, this is a veterans organization, and you're talking about one of our social members or our manager. And, well, he left the flag down after 9/11. When? The day after. You do realize that Senator Dianne Feinstein, whatever, I don't know what the events, just don't hold me to this, but but it was 2 events. Like, you realize that a senator died and all official flags are down for the next several days from mourning. And why didn't you mention it then? Because someone would have corrected your idiotic backside. You know what you're talking about here. This is people just, you know what we live in now? We live in a grievance society.
Oh,
People
big time.
exist to be aggrieved. Oh, you've put me out. You hurt my feelings. I'm going to sue you. Oh, it's just so obnoxious. It's like an episode of Jersey Shore, except everywhere.
To the level that in places like Ireland, if you hurt somebody's feelings, that you can be arrested and charged. Just because you spoke something that they took offense to, somehow you get arrested and charged. Go figure that one out.
Oh, I can't live in Ireland because there's gonna be a lot of people with purple hair that's gonna be angry.
Right? Yeah. But that's coming here now. You know, where if you don't,
Well, we've got it in California.
Right. That's why
If you're in the healthcare industry in California and you mispronounce somebody, how are you supposed to know what pronouns are? I mean, if you speak English, it's pretty obvious. He, she.
Right.
Done. Case closed. Next thing you want to whine about.
Yep, absolutely. Well, there's a reason why California is collapsing. It's slow, but it's collapsing.
It's a big state with a huge economy, but you're right. It's in the decline. I mean, you knew it years ago when people who were making $50,000 a year were living in tents because they couldn't afford to rent an apartment anymore.
Yeah, but it's collapsing needlessly because of leftist nonsense and problems we've created to be outraged about. I mean, pure and simple.
Hey, look, they get what they voted for. I didn't vote for what California has. They voted for it. They voted for Gavin Newsom, not me.
We're not certain that they actually have honest and fair elections out there either.
Yeah. What do
Well,
you
there's that.
What are you making there, Colonel? Because I can hear everything every time.
Oh, you can hear that? My bad. Sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't realize I got headphones on.
I thought he had like a tea bag or something. He was, when people dip it.
Okay, so yesterday. All right, you guys, you ready for the story here? We got a few minutes here. Okay. All right. So yesterday, we got our small games of chance license renewed finally. That was a problem for several months, and it cost us a lot of revenue for the veterans organization. So I went down and got the license on Monday, brought it back, and it was late in the afternoon. So you have to register these things in the point of sale system. Anyway, so I said, put the ones you got out tonight, but we need to get more because people are there's pent up demand. People want to come in, sit down, enjoy themselves, and buy the games, tickets, and gamble. And so we called 2 vendors and had those delivered in the morning. So I sent the manager a text message in the afternoon after I finished my broadcast, and she's usually very responsive, and no response. So Tuesday afternoon was supposed to be my time because this week is just completely full with everything going on and prepping for next week's consulting. Plus, anyway. So I got in the car, drove to the VFW, and I go in the office, and there's the club manager under the table fumbling around with cables. Well, they switched providers from Xfinity to Verizon because they were charging us 3 times more than we need to pay. And the guys who managed the camera system for security came in and had to change IP addresses because they're static on the cameras. Well, they knocked out our internet when they did that. So the tickets for the games have to be entered into the point of sale system, but the manager wasn't able to do that because they were new type of games and needed help from the provider, and the provider can remote in if you have internet. So she was doing all this. So next thing I know, I get a call from the account saying today's deposit hasn't gone in. And I'm like, you're calling here at 4:15? It's a bit late. And she goes, yeah, the bank's already closed. I said, no, the bank had closed at 5. So I took the deposit, drove to the bank, brought it back. Long story short, I got home at 10 o'clock last night. And I don't even work there. It was one thing after another. So I took care of this. So anyway, you fix one thing, you move a rock and something else comes out. So, and today I had a long day running around doing all these other things. I had to pop in there to have a meeting with the auxiliary president just to get her up to speed and hear what she's got to say. And next thing I know, I'm rushing out of there just to get back here in time to fire up everything and get on the program. Fortunately, I did my research, and was prepared for the program, which I do ahead of time. But usually I like to bone up on last minute developments and that sort of thing, especially with the storm going on right now. This is hectic. Let me take a look and see what's going on with the hurricane. Oh my goodness, this dude is completely soaked. The one that's down there in Charlotte Bay. Oh my goodness. And then he's wearing like a slicker, and it looks like it's about 40 knot winds. You can see him like he's going to blow away sideways for the Weather Channel. Oh my goodness. Mike Betts is his name. Anyway. Yeah. So you just like to bone up on stuff like that. Oh, the storm is right over the heart of Florida now. It looks like it wound up coming in below Tampa, the eye of the storm. They said it was going to be right over Tampa. So that's, I don't know if that's good or bad. Sometimes it's worse to be on the periphery because that's how the wind is whipping everything around. Have either of you guys ever been in a tornado or been, within eyesight of a tornado?
Close, but never close enough to say that it was a close call. But I mean, I've been in a lot of high wind storms and close to tornadoes, but never in direct path or anything.
It's sad when you're driving down the interstate and you're seeing the cows run the opposite direction. They're running west as I'm driving east, and you start hearing that sound over your head. They talk about a train. It really doesn't sound like a train. It sounds like the wind blowing, like when a train goes by, that. And but you can't see it, but you can hear something going on. You kind of like just grabbing the steering wheel, holding on for dear life, hoping you don't get hit by something.
Ooh, wow.
Well, I've been close enough to see those things, and that's I've skirted hurricanes. I've been in earthquakes, and I've been not in, but adjacent to tornadoes. And Mother Nature's a nasty one. She really whips up some stuff for us, but at least we're not on Venus. It's 800 degrees, and
we wouldn't be a lot. It wouldn't be a concern.
No,
molten lead falling out of the sky. I mean, some of the planets in our solar system have crazy weather. Unbelievable. It's something else.
It does. Can you imagine the one so distant from the sun? It must be freezing. I mean, like.
You mean like Pluto?
Cryogenically cold.
Is that the one so distant from the sun? Yeah, I think we're talking about Pluto. It's a Kuiper Belt object or a demi-planet.
I knew they were getting going.
Yeah, you got me started now because I love Pluto, man. I love Pluto.
Did you happen to hear that exchange between the reporter and Jean Claude, whatever Pierre there?
Karine Jean-Pierre. He's not Jean-Claude Van Damme, but Karine Jean-Pierre.
Yeah. The one that doesn't know martial arts.
Yeah. Well, now the questions are now misinformation, disinformation.
Yeah.
Just asking a question.
She's sitting over there. It's like here again, a trigger word, right? If she says misinformation, that means the reporter must shut up now. But he asked her a question. She says that's misinformation, and she proceeded to go on to explain to him about everything. He made a statement while asking the question. So when she was done, he says, "But that's exactly what I was saying." And she goes, "Yes, but the way you said it, it sounded like misinformation."
Right. Yeah. In your question, it's like I'm asking you the question. You can clarify: is this real? Is this not real? Instead of doing that, she said your question is misinformation and disinformation. But I didn't clarify the question.
I'm not going to defend Karine Jean-Pierre, not even for a second. However, White House press pool and the State Department press pool and the DoD press pool, there are some really dim light bulbs in that crowd. I saw the question to the State Department, and the journalist started by saying that the State Department administration refused to negotiate with the so-called terror, and rogue states such as yada yada yada. Yet for the past 2 years, this government has sponsored a genocide in Gaza. I'm like, oh my God. Okay, that's not a question. That's a political statement.
Right.
You're not an activist. You're supposed to be a journalist. Apparently, you missed that class at whatever school you went to.
Yeah,
I mean, it's ridiculous. That's not journalism. That's activism.
Yeah, no, exactly. You could ask about, well, what about these, the rumor about you starting a genocide, or preface it differently, but you can't say, you matter of factly have done this. What do you say about that? You can't ask.
Well, and in fact, what's happening in Gaza does not meet the legal definition of genocide, which has a legal definition.
Sure. Right.
And it's just a talking point by political leftists. And it's funny because they're telling it to a politically left administration. They're arguing with them. But look, words matter. And I have to say something. I don't know if you all have noticed this, but I've seen this really distressing and depressing decline in the quality of editorship and publications, words misspelled, characters out of place, obvious cut and paste jobs. This should have made journalism more efficient, more effective. But when there were typewriters and teleprint and teletype, there were no errors. I never saw errors in newspaper stories back then. Editors did their job, and sources were checked and verified. They don't check sources and verify anything anymore. It's ridiculous.
No.
I saw something the other day, a professor of political science writing an op-ed. Okay, that's fine. He has the prerogative to do that on a political situation, but it was clearly an anti-one party and pro the ruling party in South Africa. And he said that when the African National Congress in the May elections, with 159 seats out of 400, won a majority.
What you said, 159 out of what, 400?
Out of 400,
and they said a plurality, but not a majority.
There you go. Thank you. There's somebody who graduated from high school.
Yeah, thank you.
By the way, the political scientist teaches political science at Nelson Mandela University and has 7 advanced degrees.
But not math, apparently. So
Well, apparently not English.
Yeah, right. Words.
No,
and
and
math.
that's exact. Thank you for the response, because I'm like, majority? That's 50 plus one.
No, yeah, no.
That's like in 1992, Bill Clinton won the election with a plurality. With 42%, just about 42% of the electorate. He won the plurality. George Bush had 38%, and Ross Perot. It's economy. No, that was George Carville.
That was Carville.
Yeah, it was Carville. No, it was kind of stupid, but he was like, they're coming after my daughter. They're coming after my daughter. Remember that?
Yeah.
He dropped out of the race. Yeah, Ross Perot, but he got 19%.
They were flying helicopters over the wedding and stuff like that, and disrupting things, and that was the rumor.
I heard it was a National Enquirer, but that's just what I heard.
It was probably in the National Enquirer, probably a few of them.
No, the helicopter. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, so we are less than a month out, guys. So I think we all agree Michigan's going to be maybe the toughest nut for Trump to crack right now.
I think so, yeah.
Well, Michigan right now, I think, what did I say, was like 0.8% in her favor, where Wisconsin's 1%.
Well, if 2024 plays out the way 2016 and 2020 did, with the silent Donald Trump vote that never tell their family, never tell their coworkers, never tell anybody because they wouldn't admit they voted for Donald Trump, but 3 to 5% of people actually voted in each of those elections, swung. Look, at this stage in 2016, at this point on this date, Politico had Hillary Clinton winning by 12 points.
Yeah.
12 points.
That's true.
And I think the New York Times or something like that had her winning by 9 points. And they had Joe Biden winning by, they had her winning by 9, Joe Biden winning by 12. That's what it was at this point in 2020. And Donald Trump lost the election by 40,000 votes sprinkled across 4 states. That's an average of 10,000 votes. It's not a 12-point margin for Joe Biden. A lot of people are lying because they told pollsters what the pollsters wanted to hear. And that's the problem with polling. People will tell you what they think you want to hear sometimes.
Yeah. Well, not to mention if they know who they're calling, right? If you want to sway people and hey, I'm calling a liberal sector, of this area is all liberal and stuff like that. Let me target that area so the polls will be higher in favor, just so that the general public is seeing this and go, wow, you know what? I think I'm going to look at them a little more closely.
John?
Yes? Did we lose him?
I'm frozen up.
Oh, yeah, you're froze.
You're frozen, but we can hear you.
But your audio is fine.
Yeah, no, it's weird. I mean, I have a strong connection. I don't know why it keeps doing this. But look, I mean, that's a factor. That is a factor.
And he did.
He did drop off that time.
Okay. All right. Well, maybe it's the black helicopters or something like that, or outside his house, maybe.
I was here all along. I got pushed to backstage. I didn't drop off.
All right. Well,
that was weird. I did not touch anything, so I don't know.
I know it's this site. It's this service is not up to scratch tonight. No, it pushed me.
I got complaints from Sean too on this. I'm looking at Streamlabs.
Yeah, it pushed me back into the backstage. So anyway, but no. So that definitely is a factor. But I'm telling you, the bigger factor here is the people that are afraid of telling other people they're going to vote for Donald Trump, or they just don't like Trump and don't want to admit they're going to do it, and they do it. We're talking about a significant portion of the electorate, and it's in a race that's supposedly deadlocked. 3 to 5% is everything. 2% is everything.
I've had a few people who have been anti-Trump, since the beginning, since like 15 when he announced, that are now saying that they're going to vote for Trump, and they're not out talking about Kamala or Trump at all now. They're just like, I'm voting for Trump, and they leave it at that.
And then you have a not insignificant portion of people who work around people who politically disagree with them, and they keep their mouth shut. And if a pollster calls them and contacts them, they're not going to tell them that they're just going to either not answer, or they're going to answer the way they expect. They think they want them to answer. Right. And those people will never admit they voted for Trump, but they'll do it. And so, some people are fearful. You lose your job. Look what they do to conservatives in this country. And Melania Trump, the wife of a billionaire, a cash billionaire. The guy's he's not just real estate. He's got $500 million in cash now after all his legal. But her husband is incredibly wealthy. She's wealthy. They closed her bank account. She didn't do anything wrong. How can they be legal? They're violating the terms of their services. But they closed her bank account down to try to shut her down, to silence her husband.
Was that Bank of America?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
They can do that to the wife of a president of the United States. Imagine what to do to you and me. So imagine the number of Americans that are terrified that if they told their coworker, if they asked them who you vote for, I'm voting for Trump, that they'd be ostracized, they wouldn't get a promotion, because they have turned our political views into a weapon against us if you're conservatives. So a lot of people are afraid to speak up. I mean, I have no doubt that my outspoken views potentially could have cost me some opportunities, making a lot of money. But so what? You do what's right. You do what's right.
Integrity means a lot. I'm sorry,
Well,
but
not to a lot of people, but yeah, it does to me.
Apparently,
for
but
sure.
maybe the greater, more wealthy people lack the integrity to stick to their values. But
the one
guys
that
like
I
us
always
that are poor in the dirt, we keep our integrity intact. We're rich that way, and that's the only way we're rich.
John, the one that always gets me is I love because you get these really suspicious and not trusting of anything viewers sometimes, and the rumor circulating by someone who had envy of my performance online last year on social media made a video and said, "We have the proof. The so-called Colonel Wyatt is a CIA operative." Yeah, because what the CIA does is they hire retired military officers to go on YouTube to complain about the government.
No, hold on a minute. Never mind retired military officers, but people who have direct ties to intelligence agencies.
Exactly.
To now clandestinely work for the CIA. No, it doesn't work that way.
If I was the CIA, I would be hiring Call Me Daddy, not Chris Wyatt.
Yeah, exactly.
First off, she's got 150 million listeners. I don't.
Right.
And she's brain dead, but she's attractive, so people won't even care what she says.
I mean,
isn't there a history? Yeah. Isn't there a history of like game show hosts or actors or something like that were actually involved with
Oh
the
my
CIA?
God, here we go with the lasers again.
No, I'm just asking. I don't know. I've heard these stories before. So.
You're watching too many movies, Men with Goats or something like that.
Now there are back some of the old school, hosts and stuff like that did a lot of stuff during World War II back in the day. Yeah, you're right.
So there are two different time periods in their lives. They weren't doing it simultaneously.
Well, you got but you got also a lot of ball players that were in OSS and other things. They were very popular, so they could go places and see things. So they were actually working for intelligence agencies or military intelligence. But that's during World War II, though. It's different.
Well, we have athletes, same sort of thing. Right. that happens. I mean, look at Carter. Was it Carter Page? The guy that they spied on to get access to the Trump campaign. Carter Page actually was working for the CIA, providing them with information. He wasn't a CIA employee, and he wasn't getting paid for it, to my knowledge. But it was a source of information for the CIA, and they portrayed it as if he was a spy. And then they lied in the FISA warrant by not informing the judge, which they're required to by law, that he was an informant for one of our intelligence agencies working for the government. Yeah. So it would have prevented anything from ever happening.
They're akin to let's say a police informant, if you will. Although they're not people that got themselves into trouble, but they approach people that are in different positions like this that can maybe provide some sort of information. You're inside of a boardroom or whatever the case may be.
But I like the point that she made, which is one that I gloss over because it's just ironic. I mean, you're going to take someone who is a known former intelligence officer who's worked in multiple agencies, whose name is out there. But look, I can't do any clandestine work ever again, obviously. No. But why in the world would the CIA hire me? Look, if I was working for the CIA, I'd be senior executive service. We're talking, SES.
Cover. That's a perfect cover. You see, you're talking.
Oh my gosh, that's the guy that thinks there's lasers in our salad bar. Anyway,
I did not say that. I was the guy who was being criticized for questioning Marjorie Taylor Greene's credibility.
I'm just teasing you. No, but I mean, it's just so look. I don't know if you guys know this, but on my program, I used to do when that came out last year. I would don this cap with sunglasses, and I play Johnny Rivers' Secret Agent Man. I'd sing along with it at the end of my show. I hadn't done that in months, and today I surprised my audience. I dim the screen, I dim the lights, I pull it back up, and I'm wearing my fedora-like cap, and I start playing Johnny Rivers.
But people think intelligence work is anything like James Bond or Mission Impossible. Yeah, you're watching too many movies.
Wait,
it is for about
the fancy gadgets and the little.
It is for about a dozen people in the intelligence services, not the other 45,000, 100,000.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You got that right.
Yeah. Now, look, if I still would have wound up doing what I did, but I didn't fully understand what intelligence meant in the Army when I went into the field, and I was pretty well informed. Most people go in, they think they're going to be Jason Bourne. They have no idea. I knew it wasn't that. Yeah.
My question is it more like Maxwell Smart?
No, come on now. It's a little bit better than that. Maxwell,
just a touch better, right?
Just
Not
a touch
everything's
better.
by dumb luck.
By the way, Agent 99 is still alive. She's in her 80s.
Is she?
Wow.
She's from Pennsylvania originally.
Well, look at that. You looking her up? Chris White getting a hookup?
I know, maybe an interview.
That'd be neat.
That'd be pretty cool.
All right.
Anyway,
There we go.
well, we're going to wrap up here in just a second, folks. Any final thoughts there, Todd?
No, hey, just early voting in Tennessee starts next week, Wednesday at 9:00 a.m., and I'll be voting.
It's already underway in Pennsylvania, folks. If you do that mail-in ballot nonsense, you can already get it here in Pennsylvania. Be sure to vote. Vote early. I don't want to say often, but vote early. We'll see you next week here on the Common Sense Gurus. God bless and have a good weekend.